We've been in stealth mode for 8 years. That's Travis Kalanick, back in public, explaining why he basically disappeared after Uber and what he was building the whole time. He did it to stop running a company based on headlines and to build a culture that doesn't need fame to function. Welcome to X-Pulse Digest. This came from TBPN's full interview with Kalanick, and it's packed with unusually concrete thinking about moats, capital wars, and why physical AI is a very different game than shipping software. After Uber, the instinct would have been to do the loudest possible sequel. Kalanick jokes he could have gone from Uber to Super, maybe even Gigas, which tells you exactly what kind of gravity that brand had. Instead, he did the opposite. He started what he called city storage systems. On purpose, a name so generic it disappears into the beige wallpaper of corporate America. Employees weren't allowed to put the company name on LinkedIn. Thousands of people, and basically no inbound recruiting, no inbound sales, no ambient hype. The point wasn't cosplay stealth. It was psychological. He talks about Uber as a period where it felt like you were deciding what you do based on what the New York Times is going to write. So he optimized for the opposite feeling. Wake up, go build, repeat. There's a cost to that. If nobody knows what you are, every recruiter has to go outbound. Every salesperson has to go outbound. But he frames that pain as the feature, because it forces competence. You get good at the craft when you're not being dragged forward by the current of attention. And then, after 8 years, he flips the switch. City Storage Systems comes out of stealth and gets a new name, Atoms, plus a bigger ambition that's not just food. The original mission is simple to say and brutal to execute. Can you get a meal prepared and delivered so efficiently it starts to approach the cost of going to the grocery store? Kalanick's analogy is clean. If you pull that off, you do to the kitchen what Uber did to the car. It's not just food delivery. It's infrastructure for better food, built on real assets, real estate, construction, facilities with delivery-only restaurant operations, a software stack, robotics, even a marketplace for corporate lunch. One vivid example he gives is a model where, instead of food coming from random restaurants scattered across a city, it comes out of his facilities. Picture 30 restaurants inside a single facility. Your office orders lunch from what looks like an Uber Eats-style interface. You see 100 options, but the meals are actually coming out of a small number of optimized locations. That changes the math. One courier can bring 100 orders at a time to one office, on demand, personalized, and the system gets better as more floors of a building are on it. He describes it as network effects inside a building and network effects inside a facility. Then there's the blunt moat, owning the real estate. If someone wants to compete, he says, go buy hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of property in major cities, and then come back for the head-to-head. This is where the conversation stops being about food as a category and starts being about atoms. And he's very explicitly an atoms guy. Kalanick has a phrase for where this heads if you take it all the way. Autonomous burritos. It sounds like a joke, but he means it literally. If you want a meal delivered at grocery store-like economics, you need automated production and automated delivery. That forces you into robotics, and then into physical AI, meaning action and movement through the physical world. Atoms is still doing the food business, but now he's adding mining and transport. Mining, in his words, is about more efficient mines for Earth's industries. Transport is described as a robot wheelbase for robots. Not humanoids, specialized robots, industrial scale, optimized for getting work done. He even gives this image of watching humanoids run a half marathon in Beijing and thinking, imagine if that thing had wheels. Humanoids have their place, but wheels are a cheat code for a lot of real-world work. Mining is where this becomes more than futurism. He's not saying mines are some empty, untouched place. There are thousands of employees at a given mine, heavy machinery, lots of automation already. The unlock is productivity. Machines can run all hours, no off hours, better queuing, better coordination, computer science style, as he puts it. Then he zooms out to something almost philosophical. Everything you see is grown or mined, manufactured and moved. If we're walking into a new golden age of building, we'll need more minerals and materials. So the less glamorous, more physical parts of the economy stop looking like side quests and start looking like the main plot. He's also pretty candid that physical AI is simply harder than digital AI. Less training data. Designing a machine with an insane number of parts is not like one-shotting software. In his view, if AI can truly do that end-to-end, you're basically talking about AGI territory. And that difficulty is the appeal. If you join this world, you're opting into the hard things, chewing glass, but with a real payoff if it works. The cleanest framework he offers is his atoms like bits mapping, and it's worth holding in your head because it explains why his career looks scattered but isn't. In computing, you learn 3 core resources early. CPU manipulates bits. Storage stores bits. Networks move bits from point A to point B. Now treat atoms like bits. What manipulates atoms? Manufacturing. What stores atoms? Real estate. What moves atoms? Transport and logistics. In that framing, Uber was network for the physical world, basically digitized transportation. City storage systems starts to make sense too. Storage for the physical world, built on a real estate foundation. Atoms is him leveling that up. A food computer becomes one instance. A mining computer could be another. A wheel-based platform that serves industry generally becomes another. What's subtle here is he's not claiming you can boil everything down to software. He's saying the stack is bigger now. If you're in physical AI, manufacturing is part of your tech stack. Energy is part of your tech stack. Land development and real estate are part of your tech stack. That's also why he pushes back on being too broad. If you try to do everything, people think you've lost it. The move is to find your spot, know what you're good at, find what he calls your business soulmate, and accept you're building inside an ecosystem that already has monsters in it. He even names the current fear entrepreneurs face. In the 90s, it was, Microsoft will kill you. In the 2000s, it was, why won't Google do this? In the 2010s, it was, that looks like Uber. Now it's, that's Tesla. His answer is not to deny it. It's to pick the lane where you can actually win. One of the more specific, battle-tested parts of the episode is how he thinks about fundraising when capital itself becomes a strategic weapon. He describes late-stage Uber fundraising like a machine. 4 rooms in the New York office, booked for a week, hour-and-a-half slots running in parallel, basically 12 hours a day. One room was the 250 million and over club. Other rooms went down to around 25 million checks, and that smallest room was handled by a guy who works for a guy who works for a guy who works for me. The point isn't the flex, it's the system. Storytelling had to be standardized, so multiple people inside the company could pitch it consistently. Not a founder bottleneck, but a scalable process. Then he describes something like private market book building. Once investors said they were interested, Uber would hand them a table to fill out, valuation by valuation, how much they'd commit at each price. Aggregate demand, see what clears. Then go back and tell people, essentially, your price isn't big enough. Move up the curve. Repeat. There's a line that sticks. If something strategically important was easy, he treats that as a failure of ambition. You could have gone harder, gone further, built more advantage. He does add one cautionary note from experience. Easy money can come with cultural damage. He references the era of massa money as a case where capital was too loose, and companies got loose along with it. So yes, capital is a weapon, but it's also a substance you can overdose on. His most contrarian white pill isn't about AI taking jobs. It's about AI making certain humans more valuable, because they become the bottleneck to progress. He uses plumbers as the blunt example. Imagine everything else gets automated. Machines make buildings. You could have 1,000 buildings being built at a single time in Los Angeles alone. Except plumbers. Suddenly every plumber is like LeBron, because plumbing becomes the long pole in the tent. He extends the idea beyond plumbing. Even with autonomous cars, he points out that systems still have human overseers. Maybe it starts at 5 rides per person overseeing, then 20, then 100. But if autonomous cars scale to billions of rides, even a 1 in 1,000 intervention rate could still imply tens of millions of jobs. He's riffing, but the concept matters. Until humans are fully replaced, humans become the constraint. And if progress accelerates, the value of the constraint rises. There's also a simple economics line embedded in the joke. Robots don't have bank accounts, so at the end of the chain, the human still gets paid. This isn't a promise that everything is fine. It's a claim about where leverage shifts in a half-automated world, and it's the kind of claim you can actually argue with, which is refreshing. The thread tying it together isn't Uber nostalgia or a new brand reveal. It's a philosophy of building that's allergic to performance. 8 years of stealth wasn't just hiding. It was a filter. People who joined anyway self-selected into a culture of builders, high EQ, the kind of team that will do the extra mile in recruiting and sales because there's no hype to lean on. Even his management style points there. Distributed teams across cities are fine, in his view, as long as it's not work at home in boxers, but actual offices with real cadence. The core is empowerment, and the fewest number of rules while staying out of chaos. Once that's solved, your imagination stops being constrained by geography and starts being constrained by management capacity. And then there's the real bet behind atoms. Physical AI is slower, messier, more capital-intensive, and less forgiving than software. But if you can digitize atoms the way the last era digitized bits, you're not just building a product. You're building a new baseline for how the world manufactures and moves. If you want the full texture, including his recruiting philosophy and the specifics around the Atoms vision, listen to Travis Kalanick's interview on TBPN. The lingering question is simple. In a world where software gets easier every month, who's brave enough to go after the parts that stay hard on purpose?